good afternoon, or whatever time it is in your part of the globe, everybody on Substack Internet and on audio podcasts later who listen to this. It's great to be with you again with my friend Tori and our friend today, Grace G. Sun Kim. And we're going to be talking about her book, if I can fit it on the
Oh,
screen.
yes.
Yes.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I got my
Fabulous.
copy too.
When
I've got
God
mine on
Oh,
became,
do you have your
Kindle.
okay, you got it on the
On
iPad.
Kindle.
I was rereading it last night and was just being reminded how it was slightly depressing being a Caucasian person, but also very good. It should be on everyone's short list. Anytime the topic comes up with politics or nationalism or Christianity or frankly anything, because the whiteness pervades so much. So thank you for writing it. Thanks for what you do. You're a podcaster, you're a professor, you're an author. We're going to jump into it because we know today you only have 30 minutes. Tori and I are going to probably stay on a little bit longer than 30 minutes, but we want to maximize the time we have with you. So it's great to see you. And can we just start with, could you define for us a little bit what whiteness is?
Okay. Well, let me begin by saying thank you so much, Jonathan and Tori, for inviting me. This is my very first Substack, I don't know what you call this, recording live. So we had some little difficulties at the beginning, but I think everything's okay. So thank you so much for doing this and inviting me. I guess I'm your sixth guest, so I'm so thrilled to be on it. And thank you for reading and rereading When God Became White. I just celebrated first year anniversary.
I saw
And
that. Yeah.
Congrats.
yeah, and on my
Marvelous.
Substack, if people subscribe, they have one of five chances to win. It'll be just a random draw at the end of the month of May. And I'm also doing a random draw on my other book, Homebird Christianity, Guide to the Holy
Excellent.
Spirit, because I'm doing a whole series for Tripp Fuller on the Holy Spirit. So
Wonderful.
yeah, so this is exciting. So please subscribe to all three of us, I guess, on Substack.
Yes.
Yeah. So this book came out a year ago, and it's been a wild ride. I've been speaking on it in various locations, Australia, Canada, and the US. So I'm just thrilled to be on your Substack. You know, when I first submitted the book to InterVarsity Press, I actually called it Whiteness. So after my other book, Invisible, I just said to myself, it's so hard to remember my book titles. So I'm going to just do one word book titles. And it makes a great hashtag if you're on social media. So I submitted it as the title Whiteness, and then InterVarsity came back and said, oh no, because everybody's writing on it. Nobody knows what you're talking about if you title it Whiteness. So they gave me the new title, When God Became White, and I was very upset. I just wanted the one word title, and then I said, "Well, it's so long. Can you just take out one word like when?" So it'd be just God became white, and then they wouldn't. But after after the book was published, everybody's thrilled with the title. Everybody thinks it was a stroke of genius. So I lesson learned: don't fight with the publisher too much. But I called it whiteness because I do touch on it in many of the chapters in the book. I struggled with why in 2020s, 2023, 24, 25, where I immigrated in 1975 and it was really difficult. So 50 years ago, it was so hard with racism, in the streets and at school and at the grocery store. Everywhere I went, there was racism. But 50 years later, where there's K-pop and K-drama and, Korean movies and K-beauty, why is there still so much racism? So that's the journey that I took to write the book. And, through the research and reflecting and writing, it is because of this concept of whiteness. So it's a social construct. And, just like, when we think about race, we think so many people think it's biological. And that's how wars have begun. Like when we think about World War II, people think it's biological. So certain groups of people have bigger brains, so they're better people than others. They think it's all biological, but these are all social constructs. The construct of race, the construct of whiteness is a social construct, and it's kind of put into place to allow both of these constructs to allow racism to exist, allow white supremacy to exist, and white um, privilege to exist. It is to say that people of color are of a lesser, there's something wrong with us biologically, intellectually. We are lesser than white people. So that's the construct that has been embedded in our society. And it allows all of this to happen. And, many people in the church think, oh, no one's racist in the church, but many people will disagree. And even when I was in Australia and I was speaking to a group of Baptist ministers, they were mainly Asian Australian Baptist ministers. I asked them, I said, do you experience racism in the church? And at the beginning, everyone was quiet until a man yelled out, it's worse in the church. So we know it's
Yeah.
bad in the church. And,
Mhm.
I think the church needs to call it a sin because racism is so dangerous. And this concept of whiteness allows all of this to happen, to say that white people are at the top and people of color are just downward in a hierarchy. And there are great consequences to this, as you and I are very well aware of.
Mm.
Yeah, it's incredible. Well, if people don't think that there's racism in the church, they should read your
Yes.
book.
Yeah. And
Be,
so,
yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
And so
Well, I was
I
just going to say
connect
it's
them.
not
Uh-huh.
it's not very long. It's
Yeah.
175 pages, and it's
Hmm.
packed full of
Mhm.
really intelligent,
Oh,
insightful, important things that Caucasians particularly, but everyone should
Mhm.
know. And when it's in black and white like this, no pun
yeah.
intended, um,
Yeah.
it's it's like undeniable. It's
Mhm.
just it's crazy.
Yeah. So, it is a short book, and each chapter ends with, some questions. Because I didn't write that at the beginning, and the publisher thought it's a great book for adult forum or Bible study or even family, book club. And it has been because many people, many churches, and many groups are telling me that they're reading it together because even though it's very short, it is packed with
Mhm.
some of my stories, but also the research that I was able to gather to kind of help us understand what is happening. And I've linked, how churches and society and people are racist to the understanding of God. So many people, even for myself, when I was writing the book and trying to make sense 50 years later, why there is still so much racism around me, and just not just to me, but to a lot of other people, I realized that as Christians, if we continue to have this white male notion of who God is, that continues to legitimize whiteness. So it's like a big circular kind of thing that we really need to dismantle because whiteness then allows this white male God to exist. And it just goes into this circle, continuing to legitimize each other, while the consequence is that there is racism. And, people in the church or in society think, well, racism isn't that bad. But when we really
Mm.
dismantle and think about racism here in American, soil, we know the genocide was created by racism. It's the church that allowed you can take the land and kill those on it if they're not Christians. So, manifest destiny and, the doctrine of discovery, that's all, racism being played out. And races, that meant 90 to 98% of Native Americans were murdered. This is how dangerous racism is. And we know that racism also led to the enslavement of Africans on this soil. that is just horrific part of our history, and it just continues on and on and on, even till our present time. So that's why racism is so dangerous. That's why the church really needs to call it a sin. So we will stop being so racist. We can try to dismantle this concept of whiteness so that we can live out the gospel and recognize that we are all equal and that we're all created in the image of God.
Mm.
Beautiful. There's this complete dissonance, isn't there, between the gospel and this link with whiteness and Christianity and all. It's when you read your book, like I'm sitting as I was going through it, I was going, oh my gosh, the dissonance here.
Yeah,
How we got here, right?
yeah. So, when we think about how Christianity emerged, it was 2,000 years ago through the birth of Christ, and he was born in, this Palestine area. So we kind of call him Palestinian Jew. And he was born a dark, kind of olive-skinned man with dark hair and dark brown eyes. But as we see Christianity being spread under the Roman Empire, we see that Jesus becomes more European, more white, more like a king and an emperor, and not like this Palestinian Jew who was homeless and roamed around and was with the people. And there is this direct correlation of why this is happening. Well, under the Roman Empire, Christianity became the main religion of the empire. So the empire is spreading around, Africa, the Middle East, and Europe. It's just spreading and spreading. And recently, I just came back from Rome, and to see, many of the buildings that's still up there and the basilicas that they built, you can see how powerful and wealthy and strong the Roman Empire was for them to kind of carry out this task. So, as they are spreading and colonizing people, many of them are dark skinned, many of them are olive skinned like Jesus, many of them are Muslims. So, you can't have Jesus or God. So many will ask, well, Jesus, is he God, etc. And if Jesus is God, then God must be male, and etc., etc. We won't
Mhm.
go there today,
Right.
but as Christianity is spreading, and as the emperor or those in leader are killing off the colonized people in
Mhm.
large numbers. It's astounding how many they had murdered, and even during the Crusades, the amount of Muslims that they murder, it's really high. And the only way you can carry this out is if your Lord and Savior, the Jesus that you are worshiping and the God you are worshiping, looks like you, like the Romans, like white
Mhm.
people, like the European people. You can't have them looking like a Muslim because you are slaughtering the Muslims and the darker skinned people. So
Mm.
there is this correlation between how Jesus became more white with the spread of Christianity and the spread of the Roman Empire. So it's very dangerous. And that's why, I understand that Christianity is dwindling in the US. It's dwindling almost every day. Less and less people are going to church, and less people find Christianity even a worthwhile religion to even consider. Even though Christianity is dwindling, the effects of Christianity is still
Mm.
there, embedded in our culture, in our social media, in our literature, in our plays. It's there. So even though Christianity is dwindling, the Christian remnants or the influence is still present here in America. And that's why it's so dangerous for us to continue to say that God is a white male, because a white male is a way of how whiteness works to legitimize the oppression of people of color and to their death. That's why Black people have said, Black while driving, because so many are arrested or murdered as they're just driving around to the grocery store or to a friend's house. This is how dangerous it is. And the church, Christianity, has to take it more seriously. And really, I know many denominations are working on dismantling whiteness and racism and any kind of isms, but it's not enough. We have to do it harder, more officially, so that the whole denomination or the whole worldwide church really tackles this problem. Because if we don't, it's going to continue to lead to more death, to genocide, to wars, and enslavement. So this, it's a small book, and I tried my best in the book to convey the dangers of this.
Mhm.
So I hope the readers will kind of grasp it and be transformed to be either in solidarity with people of color,
Mm.
or to fight this racism that is so destructive in the church and society.
Yeah, well, genuinely appreciate what you've written, and I love it. I hope lots of lots of people will read it. Hey, for I know we don't have a ton of time. For
Mhm.
you, you've got about 15 more minutes. We're going to hang out.
Mhm.
But one of the things I really appreciated towards the end of the book, you got into this little section called "A Theology of Visibility."
Love that.
I know, and as soon as I read that, I was like, "Oh
Yeah.
man, that's so appropriate, not only for all
Yeah.
marginalized people, but also for my friends who are Korean,
Mhm.
who that invisible visible thing
Yeah.
is so
Beautiful.
appropriate." Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. We are in May, and May is AAPI Heritage Month.
Mhm.
I know so many people don't celebrate it. And, if you're in the school system, at least with Black History Month, it's during the school year. So there's more time to celebrate. But it's kind of unfortunate it's in May, and, most colleges and universities are already finished by May, and high school, it's near the end of the term. So kids and students don't get to celebrate it. But even wider society, we seem to kind of gloss over it.
Mm.
But it was interesting. I spoke in Belmont in April, and they have moved AAPI Heritage Month celebration to April because they recognize that the students are off campus and they can't celebrate it. And they told me that many West Coast universities and colleges also moved it up to April so that they can celebrate it. But this is just an example of the invisibility, particularly of Asian Americans. And I developed the theology of visibility in my previous book called Invisible.
Mm.
So, any listeners here, you
Mm.
could read When God Became White, because I do bring it up again at the end of the book. But I initially developed it in the book Invisible. I don't have a copy right now, but you can just Google and find the book Invisible. And, and when I've spoken on that book in churches and in schools, people always ask me, why is it called Invisible? You see, no Asian American will ever ask me that because that's just our common experience. We are made invisible in our society. Our experiences of racism are kind of brushed aside because we're not Black people. We're kind of in between. We're not Black, and racism in the US is commonly talked about in Black and white terms.
Mm.
So our experience of the Chinese Exclusion Act, which was very oppressive against Asians. It was put in place from 1882, and Congress said only 10 years, but they kept extending it to 1943, which means until 1943, no Asian Americans here could vote. They had to
Wow.
carry papers around, and
Mm.
they couldn't. There were so many restrictions, and people don't um, know anything about this because
Mm-mm.
it's not taught in our
Mhm.
schools. I raised three kids here in Pennsylvania from kindergarten to high school. Never a word about Asian American history. many years ago, I went with Reverend Jesse Jackson to New York State, where there were some Korean and Chinese congressmen, and we were trying to push for, at least in the state of New York, where there is a high percentage of Asian Americans, that it should be taught in the public schools. And nothing happened. So nobody knows about this, that we couldn't
Mhm.
even vote. And in 1943, it wasn't even all Asians. It was just, I think first it was Chinese, and then 1946 Japanese, and 1949 Indians. And then slowly they just said, okay, every Asian Americans can vote. That is very recent
Mhm.
history. You know, when we think about voting rights, we always talk about women's rights and African Americans,
Yeah.
but we don't talk about Asian Americans. So this is the invisibility, that our experiences of difficulties and hardships are made invisible. And everybody just says, oh, Asian Americans are all okay. They're doing well. They're rich. You know, they're going to top schools, the model minority. But that's all false. And so we really need to understand that certain groups of people are made invisible. So even in that book, I wanted it to be a lens for how other groups of people are made invisible, either through their gender, sexuality, their socioeconomic status, or ableism. There's so many ways that different groups of people are made invisible.
Mhm.
And so we really want to lift them up. So, you know, in that book, and then When God Became White, I introduced the 4 Korean words and terms to help us to move towards a theology of visibility. And so I know this is a short recording. So if you're interested, please read one or both of those books, because I know so many people, because any book, it's a lens to kind of see our own lives or see how the world is. And so the book Invisible and When God Became White, you know, I've put in some of my experiences. And
Mhm.
I'm just hoping that through these experiences and through the content of the book, it becomes a lens for people to recognize that either they're participating in this racism, or they're going to try to dismantle it and be in
Mhm.
solidarity. So I'm hoping that the theology of visibility, I know many students and many people in the church have told me it's such a helpful way. So I hope that it'll be really helpful to the readers who are seeking, you know, how can I be part of the good work, or be part of the gospel message that Christ was trying to share with us. And so that's just one tool to help us. So thank you, Jonathan, for bringing that up. Thank you.
Yeah. Tori, what do you think?
Beautiful. Where, uh, because we only have a few minutes, I wanted to bring up you talking about God as spirit, because when I think about, I was listing down before, I was listing down white Christianity and
Yeah,
the idea of a white God and a white Jesus, and it was like one dimensional, one directional, not to be questioned, not to be critiqued, right? This limiting, controlled idea, right? And
yeah,
it's static. It comes to mind as this static kind of quality. But your suggestion is to talk about God as spirit, which I
yeah.
love. Can you
Uh-huh.
talk more about that? Because it's a beautiful idea.
Yeah. So at the end of the book, as Jonathan mentioned, I do bring in the theology of visibility. And, you know, because the book is titled When God Became White, it is the gendering and
Mhm.
you know, the racialization of God that allows patriarchy and racism to exist in the church. So much of my work is on the Holy Spirit, or the Spirit, or pneumatology. And at this time, I'm also, you know, I know, Jonathan, you're good friends with Trip Fuller and many of that crowd. So I am doing that online class on the Holy Spirit. So you can register. Just go to wherever, homebrewedchristianity.com, and look for that course. There's still 3 weeks left. And we go really deeply into the Holy Spirit, and, you know, from the Bible to early church to contemporary times. So please register for that. It's free, or you can donate to help Homebrew Christianity. So there I go more in depth into the study of the Holy Spirit. But almost all of my books, I've told Tripp and I've told many other people, everything leads to the Spirit. So all my books, even this book, When God Became White, it
Mhm.
leads to the Spirit because Spirit is non-gendered and non-racialized. And so when we think about God, God is this Spirit God who created the world and put everything into motion and created all of us. And Genesis says, in the image of
Mm.
God. That includes people of different backgrounds and ethnicities and gender. It's not just men, but women were created in the image of God. So that's why the Spirit, I always go to the Spirit because Spirit is more welcoming, it's more
Mm.
inclusive, it's very empowering. We recognize that the Spirit is all around us in all of creation and also within us. People forget that, the Spirit of God is all in us. I teach at a Quaker school, Earlham School of Religion, and Quakers love to say, that of God in you.
Mm.
And, that might have different meanings, but for me, it is the spirit that dwells within us. It is what changes us and empowers us. It makes us new every day. And that's the good news that, we're not someone who, when we're 5 years old or 10 years old, we continue to become new people. And that's very biblical. The Old Testament speaks about being created anew every day. Or I don't know the exact passage, but I'm sure the listeners know the Bible better than me. Created me a clean heart.
But Tori, we
So
know
Yeah.
Tori doesn't. She's a pagan.
No, I don't read it much anymore. Totally a pagan.
but anyway, the scriptures do talk about being, made new every day. And that's what the Spirit does. We become new, we become better people.
Mhm.
We want to live out the gospel message of equality, of inclusion, of loving our neighbors and our enemies. So we can't do that with racism and
No.
sexism around us and in the church because that's inhibiting us. So it is
Mm.
really, the book is a call to really change our ways of thinking and the language that we use. It really defines, like it really affects our minds and how we understand things. That's why the choice of words, that we don't use these masculine kind of European empire words like
Mm.
king and master,
Yes.
because then we that informs our thoughts and our images of God, and that prevents us from seeking and understanding the feminine and the loving and the embracing side of God, which is very biblical and part of our tradition that we really need to uplift and retrieve and use. So the liturgies in the church is important. I know many churches have moved away from the masculine and trying to use more inclusive, but not everyone. So we
Mhm.
really have to be more effective and intentional in the words that we choose to speak about God because all those inform our thoughts, which then inform our actions. It's
Mm.
all intersecting and intertwining. So we really need to retrieve the feminine and the non domineering metaphors and words and imaginations of who God is so that we can become more loving people, more embracing people, and trying to live out the gospel, which is all about love and loving our neighbors and our enemies.
Mhm. Beautiful.
Amen to that.
Oh,
That's some,
thank
Yes.
you.
that's some good
Yes.
stuff. Well, thanks for spending a half an hour with us. We know you got
Oh, thank you.
plenty of other places to go. So Tori and I are going to hang out and just chat for a little bit. And
Okay. Thank you so much for having me. And, I just appreciate every interview that I do. And I really appreciated this one, my first one on Substack.
that's
So
right.
thank you
Yay.
so much. And since
Thank
it's my
you.
first time, I don't even know how to exit. Do I just hit the X on the top right button?
I guess. I don't know. Just
Okay.
start hitting some buttons and see what
I
happens.
hope I
Yes,
don't
totally.
disconnect the whole
No, I
interview.
don't.
Okay. Thank
I don't
you
think
so
you will.
much.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
See you,
Yeah,
Grace.
bye.
Okay.
Take
Bye
care.
bye.
Bye.
All right. Good luck trying to figure out how to log
Yeah, I
off.
know. Exactly. There we go.
Oh,
It
easy
worked.
enough. It's so easy.
Fabulous.
Yeah, so easy to log off. It's so easy to get out of a conversation with you and I.
I'm serious. That's it. We're out of here.
And we've
But
had,
what a fabulous book. It really was. It really is, I should say, in present tense. It's just a great,
I know,
great book.
and I was, only obviously partly joking when I first started and said that was kind of it's depressing to read, right? It's
It
just like,
is the reality, because you are reading the reality of things, the history from another perspective that we should have been listening to and hearing. And yeah.
uh,
So what do we do? What do we do? I'm Caucasian, right? I mean, I'm queer, but I'm Caucasian. I'm female, so I've got to, but what do we do as white people?
yeah. Well, I check more boxes than you, so the question is, yeah, very prevalent. Well, since you asked, I'll tell you what I thought of last night.
Yeah.
I have a couple like I have a couple other books in my reading queue that
Mhm.
I've been putting
Mhm.
off lately
Mhm. Mhm.
because, as Joe says, you have to be actively anti-racist.
Absolutely.
It,
Totally.
this thing doesn't get diminished or defeated by ignoring it.
Mm-mm.
And I realized last night that recently I've probably been ignoring some stuff, and I'd like to think some of it is out of trying to pay attention to my freaking limbic system, which gets
Sure.
massively overwhelmed from time to time. But then some of it I'm also not so sure. So even like with a couple of other books, there's one on Haiti in particular
Mm.
that I've I've been putting off because it's going to make me angry, it's going to make me frustrated, and then I'm going
Yeah.
to carry this thing. But what the expletive else can you do? I have to. I shouldn't say you. I'm speaking now to myself. I have to
Yeah.
be able. I got to carry this thing, and if whatever it does, it does. But that's kind of how I start to respond. Whoop, are you okay? Did I lose you?
I'm back, but the lights went out, so I'm gonna just go. Like something always is happening on these. What did you say? Because I missed just what you said
Um,
about we have to.
well, I was just saying that I don't know that I have any other choice. I have to care. I have to pick this thing. I have to continue to pick this thing back up to be
Yes,
actively involved because to not be involved at all is to not do anything. So
I agree with that. We do have to, and I think that I've made a list too. I was thinking through some things. If you want to hear some of the things that I was
I do.
considering. I think, like you, one of the things we can do is just read other people's perspective and experiences, right? And listen to those experiences. So I have this list and I could rattle everything off, but a recent lecture that I went to at Emory was Dr. Tomi Oredian, and she is a Nigerian American, and I think the term is Naj American,
Oh wow.
immigrated when she was a kid. But what she said is people contain whole worlds. And I love
Mm,
that idea, right? Is that reading other people's stories, other people's experiences. I think of James Cone. I think of Will Gaffney
mhm,
as a midrashic womanist, theologian, or no, biblical scholar, I should say, not theologian. She is a biblical scholar. I think of obviously Grace Jisun Kim, and her work, who we just talked with. But there's so many. I have the Bell Hooks, um,
mhm,
Howard Thurman. Like
mhm,
there are just so many current and past, theologians, philosophers, fictional authors that we
Right.
can read to gain understanding and knowledge for sure. Uh, I have other, I listed like seriously. Let me keep going.
Sure.
I've got a weird internet connection, so I'm just going to keep doing it. I go to church online, hybrid. It's two hybrid churches that I go online, and I'm a little bit resistant to listening to cisgendered white males preach anymore. Like, I think, and nothing against you, and I have 3 wonderful brothers who fall into that category and a dad, right?
Hmm.
But what I'm trying to do is offset that. And so I go to church with the Reverend Dr. Jackie Lewis at Middle Church and also Otis Moss III at Trinity UCC in Chicago.
Wow.
And I make a point of listening to people, especially in the church setting, who have a completely different take on things than what I grew up in because I want to hear something different. I want to hear
Hmm.
something outside of
Hmm.
this vein that I've been in, right? Um the other thing that I have, and I think it's incredibly important, is that because whiteness and race are a social construct, is that maybe we should investigate our ancestry.
Hmm.
Maybe we should investigate where our people came from and where they traveled and how they migrated and why they migrated, because they all did. And so when I go back into my own personal ancestral history there, the DNA, it's about people migrating. It's about people migrating because of famines, because of war, because of like, and I hold in me DNA about of traumatized and the traumatizer. I hold both.
Hmm.
And suddenly whiteness disappears, right? And I can name very specific groups of people who've migrated for very specific reasons. And suddenly it just, I'm talking particulars, not this general generic cardboardish one-dimensional thing, right? So I would encourage people to investigate their ancestry as a way to kind of make that whiteness disappear and in your own life, right?
That's a
Does that
great,
make sense?
yeah, no, it's great input because, um, we need to broaden the scope of how we address this situation. And of course, it has to involve prayer and listening to the spirit,
Mhm.
um, and some of these things. But I don't know that I'd ever thought about it in those terms, like doing an ancestry kind of thing could very well be a way to help people again address this thing. Because then, like you said, you're being confronted with the reality of whatever you find and how we're all just an amalgamation of a whole
We
bunch of
are.
things going on.
We are. I studied for 2 years at the Living School, and I mentioned that last time with Brian, who's now dean of the Living School, CAC, and Center for Action and Contemplation. And Dr. Barbara Holmes was a teacher there during my time. She just passed away in October of 2024, and that was her suggestion to us because we were a largely, Caucasian audience
Hmm.
of students. And someone asked, "What do we do?" And she said, "Figure out who you are. Like, go do some work, right?
Hmm.
Do some personal work on just how you got here because we didn't just show up in this moment, right? There's a pre, and then we are a small snippet in this, and then it's going to continue."
It's interesting.
Wait, what is Bo saying?
General
It's
invitations to
crazy, this
see
internet.
things, yeah, to see things differently can be powerful.
Yes.
Yeah, I think those are the only kinds of invitations, especially for those of us on the white side, the only kinds that we should be probably trying to
Mhm.
give.
Yeah. And for us, oh, go ahead.
Nope, go for it.
I was just thinking of aligning ourselves and allying ourselves and also speaking out in these systems where we have the white privilege. It's probably the best course too is. And I think it can happen in simple ways. Like at conferences, right? Making sure that we have other voices present so that we're not just hearing from this one
Yeah.
stream that's been here for so long. We need to pull in as many people as we can with different experiences and voices.
Yeah. Yeah. I've thought of that a lot. It's challenging in some of these settings
Mhm.
for lots of different reasons, some of which are really valid, some probably less so. But it's challenging to broaden the scope. But all we can do is keep working at it, and little things like we're doing today, I think, helps.
Mhm.
David Tinson says, I think another tragic symptom of not moving beyond the racist norms of our culture is the smallness of soul it maintains.
Mm,
Yes, it forces the person offloading their racism onto the other person to be small. Not only does it make the other person small, it forces the one doing the racist work
it
to be small.
does. It sure does.
At the James Baldwin thing, and you brought up, CAC 2 weeks in a row. I brought up James Baldwin now 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah. Good stuff there. Good resources, I think.
So I keep thinking of this story when Grace is talking about theology of visibility, and she goes on to give 4 Korean words to use to ascribe to God, and I just thought that was really interesting and helpful. One of the words was chi, CHI,
Mhm.
which is
Mhm.
a word that was more common to me than the other. I don't even remember the other 3 words. Part of it is because of a little story that I experienced years and years ago. Now it's been probably 20 years ago, and I hadn't thought of this story for a really long time until I read Chi last night. But I did this
Mhm.
leadership thing in Arizona way back around the turn of the century, and I don't even remember the name of it now. Someone from my church paid for it for me. We went off to this. It was like cloaked in clandestine language, like you really didn't know what you were getting into. You flew into Vegas and you got picked up by someone you didn't know and taken out to this like hotel in the middle of the desert. It was just this weird stuff. I mean,
Right.
I trusted the guy who paid for it for me, and also now in 2025, it sounds really sketch versus uh, 2002, whenever this was. But actually, it might have been late '90s. But anyhow, um, so it was just one of these intense, weird leadership. Like I think it was 72 hours of almost like psychological leadership boot camp kind of thing, where they would
Mhm. Yeah.
treat you like poorly and put you in weird settings.
Oh
And
my.
I know it was really odd. Now I would not it's come up since then. I've never recommended it to anyone, but I've always followed it up by saying, actually, for me, I kind of it was kind of a fun experience, if I can qualify the word fun. Anyhow, long story short, the whole weekend built to the last event, which was everyone was going to break these boards, and
Okay.
you were going to channel whatever inside of you. And as the story went, or as the weekend went along, there was more and more talk about chi, and it was something I
Right.
only knew as coming from a evangelical background.
Yeah.
The only thing I knew to do was to automatically assume that that's like something new age or weird or whatever.
Right.
But so it came down to the final night, the final thing, and it's all this big build up. There's all this tension, like, are you going to be able to break these boards? Are you going to be able to channel whatever it is? And so they asked for volunteers. I immediately jumped up. I wanted to go first. There was probably maybe like 50 people. Lights are dark, spotlight on you.
Right.
I get up in front of these boards. I genuinely have no idea what's going to happen, and I feel compelled to say I don't believe in chi, but I do believe in the spirit of God or something. I'm imagining myself like a modern day David, cha-
Right.
facing down Goliath or something, and you come at me with sticks and stones with your new age terminology, but
Oh
something
gosh.
that's what's kind of going
Okay.
on in my mind, right?
Sure.
And thankfully, or maybe I don't know, given my mindset, maybe it would have been better if I hadn't. But thankfully, I broke the boards. And
Mhm.
I remember talking to my son Shay about it, who was a little bit older. You've met my boy Evan, but you haven't met
Mhm.
Shay. But
Mhm.
when we got home, and a couple of times over the years, how that story has come up and how like embarrassing it is now.
Yeah.
As I look back at that whole weekend, it was actually a lot of really good stuff. I would love to. I'm not going to do it, and I'm not going to recommend anyone.
Come on.
But I personally would love to re-experience all of that in the context of, a more expansive, gracious
Mm.
theology now. And at the time, I was doing the best I could. It's all I really knew. But maybe this is my way to offer penitence and confess that
Yeah.
even in tiny ways like that, though that wasn't a South Korean, necessarily racist kind of thing. It was still, I see how easily I got caught up in the ideological thing of feeling the need to defend a particular thing that now I'm like, what is
Yeah.
that?
Yes.
So that's what I thought of last night when
Um,
I was reading about Chi.
wow. The need to not to have to defend it, right? I think there's something important in that. It's a great story and anecdote, and yeah, I'm just sitting with that. Why do we feel the need to have to defend the gospel or defend? Yeah, it puts us in that posture, right? Of there's going to be someone who wins. There's got to be someone who wins. There's got to be a
Yeah.
master. There's got to be a winner. A yeah.
Yeah, and I am the arbiter of truth here. I'm going to be the person who brings the real truth to these other folks who are experiencing this thing with me out of fear that I might be wrong or I might.
Yeah. Be changed. Yeah. Or wrong or and all
Yeah,
the things.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. The need to evangelize,
Yeah.
the need to defend, as Bo says. It's true. David asked, "What
Mhm.
this is this a Netflix series? Was Nicole Kidman there?" Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. It would have been good if Nicole Kidman had been there. He might have
yeah.
made some money off it.
There we go.
Yeah. Well, um, I don't know what else to say other than
And and I throw electricity. I don't even know it's I'm paying attention because the first time we did this, the battery ran out on my phone. And so I keep it charged, but now I don't have electricity. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen now?
well, you sounds like you need to shut down, power down, and go find some safety or something. You're out of electricity. It's
I,
probably a storm coming through Georgia.
I have no idea. But I'm
Yeah.
enjoying this. This is good.
I heard the devil went down to Georgia.
Me too. I'm
I,
not sure.
I,
I'm not sure where he landed.
well, hey, happy birthday.
Thank you, thank you.
And when I get to be 57, my goal is to have my hair look as good as yours.
A- Absolutely, totally. you you could style it this way. Yes, you could do it.
I just a little bit longer. I can
Yeah.
get there. Hey, next week is the 30th, right? We're gonna have Paul
It
Young.
is. I know.
You broke up there for a
I'm gonna
second, but now you're back.
sorry. Who knows what's happening with the phone and everything else with the no electricity, but looking forward to it and will be fabulous.
Yeah, I don't think Paul has done a video Substack either, so he'll be as
Oh,
equally nervous, but there's no more gracious spirit in the world than Paul Young, so that'll be fun to hang out with him next Friday. We got other people lined up.
good.
I'm talking people like Matthew David Segal or Siegel. I don't know if
Hmm.
you know Matt. Have you read any of his stuff yet?
I have not and need to, but I'm so looking forward to it.
That guy, I mean, I never hear him speak that I don't think I want to be like Matt. He's awesome.
Mm, that's
And
fantastic.
I mentioned it to you because I don't know where you're at in your dissertation reading, your studies, but if I know you probably don't need more stuff to read, but his stuff,
His
uh,
stuff is worthy.
his stuff is worth reading, and then you get a chance to interact with him, and who knows? He's awesome. Who else? We've got
Good.
Brian's on coming up in a few weeks.
Mhm.
We've got mutual open and relational friends with books coming out, and I've got a couple doctors, Dr. John Pohl, Dr. Chris Hansen.
Nice.
Sorry,
Yes.
speaking
It'll
of
be fabulous.
lots of white male cisgendered people. Sorry, we got to do better. But I'll
But
ask them on.
we have Ilya Delio.
There you go. That's better. That's right.
Yay.
Also not on Substack yet, so that'll be interesting. Anyhow, I'm going to ask the doctors
be good.
about things like how to how to live and operate in the current climate that we're in. That's
I
so
like that.
anti-science, but also, can I just say, there's something interesting about like how the current administration, well, it's a complete crap show, of course. But there is something interesting about how some people are trying to reorganize things. And it strikes me as interesting because some days I think all of us would agree that things need to be reorganized. But then when it's people that you don't like doing it, all of a
Right.
sudden everyone just says it's terrible, which it might be terrible. But yeah, I want to ask doctors Paul and Henson about how to be
Good.
more intelligent with, our healthcare is whacked, but also we can't go anti-science. So anyhow, that's what I'm thinking
No,
with.
it's almost like this pause, right? Yeah, that's going to be a great question and a great conversation. I hadn't thought of it that way. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Well, as I was saying it, I realized I'll need to figure out how to articulate my question better. Do you know what's funny about reason I'm hesitating is, like, all of a sudden I don't want people to think, oh, does he like the current administration or something? And
Yeah,
I
it's a
probably don't.
quandary.
I probably don't, but I also don't really care to rile up the binary
Yeah.
anti whatever either. So
And
yeah,
maybe that, yeah, and that feels like that's where the question is, right? Is how do we participate, or how do we understand, or how do we kind of um maintain this approach to science and be open to all of it, and all, without resisting when it's people that we don't like and all of this? How do we stay in a stance of
yeah,
openness and
yeah,
listening?
yeah,
Yeah,
something like that. Anyhow,
something. We'll get it together
we'll
before
get it
then.
together. We got lots of good people on the docket, and thanks everyone for joining us. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Subscribe to Grace's Substack, and Tori, we'll
It's a
see you
terrific
next
book.
week. And a terrific.
Yes.
That's right.
See ya.
All right. See you. Bye.
Bye.